Welcome to the Victorian Parents Council's VPC Live event. The Victorian Parents Council is a registered charity organisation dedicated to everyone who supports parents in educating their children. I'm Jackie Vandervelde, your host today. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackie Vandervelde, and it's my great pleasure to be hosting this VPC Live event and series again for 2023. They keep asking me back, so I must be doing okay. It's lovely to see some familiar faces and familiar names who have registered for this event tonight. So tonight we are going to be speaking with Paula Hanson. And Paula, welcome. It's lovely to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Jackie. Lovely to be here.
And look, we are actually very blessed, to be honest, to have Paula with us, because Paula is actually going to be our more regular guest across this year, talking about all about music series and the benefits of music. So it's going to be a sensational series. So Paula is the most amazing person. So we actually met for the first time last week. So Paula is a performer, educator, choral director, and voice coach. Just got a little disclaimer. So really, all of the things that Paula is going to be talking about are from her professional experience. But of course, it's very general in nature. Okay, so if you've got particular professional advice or particular issues, then she's recommending that you seek your own professional advice. So a little bit about Paula. Okay, that's a little bit about Paula. Paula is the most amazing person. She's got a million things on at once, and she's very particular interest, and we're going to be delving into this, is about her keen interest in neuroscience and music. So I think this is something that parents are certainly becoming more aware of, and we're delighted to have you being able to give us more information about that, Paula. But look, we've got a series, so there's going to be, and also too, Paula's available for private consultations as well. So we'll have her details up for you to be able to contact her as part of the feedback in this webinar. So Paula, maybe the next slide, because we've got an incredible range of presentations that are going to come across the year. So today is all about music. This is more of a generalized introduction to the work that Paula does. But look, tell us a bit more about, well, first of all, what do you want to say about yourself by intro?
Oh, look, I don't know that I want to say that much about myself. Look, I guess it's, I've had a passion for music my whole life. I had music lessons growing up, and did a lot of performing. I pursued music professionally as a career and academically, and that's taken me all over the world, and I've learnt a lot, and I've spent a lot of money doing it, and now I'm at the other side of it, where I'm a parent, and I'm how I use music with my child, and I've worked in schools, I've taught in schools as well, I run choirs, I do all sorts of things. But for me, there's an underlying passion for me about song in particular. Now, all music's important, and I'm not disqualifying one over the other, but for me, song is important because of what song can impart to us, the conjunction of music and words, and what that can give us as we move through life. And we'll talk more about that in some of the other sessions. But I think that's always been the keen thing for me, and how we can find meaning, because I think that's what life's about, really, is finding the meaning and the purpose for why we're here. Beautiful. And so over the series of presentations, we're going to look at music from different perspectives, and also how it relates to us as parents at the same time. So tonight is a big overview, as well as just examining what is music and why is it important, and just setting up a bit of a framework for where we're going to go. I'm not sure of the order that we're going to do this in. That's a bit of a work in progress. But we're going to look at good and bad music. Like, is there such a thing? And what's the difference, if there is? And as part of that, we're going to look at our own prejudices and preconceptions, usually based on our conditioning and our own experience, about what we think music is. And then how does that influence our children, or what choices do they make in relationship to music? Do they just do music lessons to please us? Are they getting something more out of it than being told it's good for them? And just looking at the different perspectives of how we view music can influence our children. And I think that's a good way to start, because if we're really clear about what we know and understand of music, it allows us to be better informed as we make the other choices as we move along. And, when we think about the music our children choose, I'm not sure if anybody's got teenagers at home, but usually, the music our kids will choose in their teenage years is an act of rebellion as well. And we need to understand what that can tell us, because music can be more than just an experience. It can sort of be a secret code, and you can find out things about what your kids are really interested in and what they need to understand about themselves and the world as well. So, for me, music's everything. Music's in everything that we do. We're also going to look at some of our perceptions about music. Is it just for the elite? What does it mean to be involved with music? Then we'll look at music in the early years, what you can do with young children. And if you've missed the boat, it's not too late. There are other things that you can do, or you can influence your grandchildren one day. But the things that you can do in early years that can really enhance your children's, not only their musical potential, but their academic potential and their emotional potential through engaging with music. And we'll explore then how that plays out and what we can introduce at different stages of our children's lives in relation to their initial engagements with music. We're going to look at the big issue of music in schools in terms of curriculum, how different schools enact the curriculum. Are our kids getting enough music in their curriculum? And maybe if this is something that interests you to take up as a topic with your own school, give you some of the key talking points that might help you to influence some change in that school environment as well. And we'll look at the different issues around music in schools, music scholarships within private schools. Look at what sits around that, and then where music in a school environment can take your kids and what they can do with it. We'll look at private music education, so private music lessons. And again, how to find a good teacher. What's good teaching? What should you be aware of? What are some of the things that if you hear your kids saying when they come home from the lesson that might raise a red flag or two? Or just how can you get better informed? If you've never had music lessons yourself, there's an awful lot of things we do as parents, I think, that come from our instinctive desire to want to give our kids the best. And so there are things that we think are good for our kids, but if we haven't experienced them ourselves, we actually can't measure what's good and what's not. So we'll give some advice, we'll give some clues around that and things that you can look for and how to find the right teacher for your child for what their needs are. And a bigger sort of discussion around that is group music education. So in school, outside of school, and what that can lead to. We'll look at the growing perspective of music as a career, right? Everybody says don't get involved with a drummer or a bass player for good reason. But there are lots and lots of careers within music that I think not everybody considers, as well as the growth of creative industry in Australia. And I've got to check the data, but from the last time I looked, I think creative industry is our third highest economy driver in terms of employment and engagement in our economy. We're going to look at music and special needs. Now, for those of us who have children with special needs, we'll look at what music can do to support their growth and development. But even more broadly, we'll look at how music can assist our children with their emotional growth and their executive function, whether your child has any developmental issues or not. Building the strength around executive function as a human being is a core life skill and measure of success in life. So music can help do that. So I'll provide some more information. We'll look at things around music therapy as well. And, if your kid is a different learner or doesn't fit the mold in certain things, music might be that thing that brings it all together for them. So we'll look at some examples of that as well. And then we're going to look at how you use music in the home. What can you do in your home with music to not just enjoy music with your child, but also create a bond, strengthen a bond, and create memories. You know, music is one of the things that leaves us as we send, we leave this mortal coil. I'm sure we've all had examples or heard stories of, people that no longer have their cognitive powers in old age, but you start singing a song that their mother sang to them, they'll remember every word. And I think there's value in understanding the role of music in our life across our lifetime. And if, as parents, we can be a part of creating those memories, that music's a really good way to do it. That's the overview of the series, Jackie. It's only a little topic.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So folks, that's what's coming up. So pencil it in. We'll have the dates and the events and the topics up on the website shortly. We've now established dates, so we know what we're doing. But we know that quite a number of parents have expressed directly that they're interested in music and the role of music in their children's education and development. So I think this is going to be a sensational topic. And
I hope so. I'll do my very best. As I said, this is the passion of my life.
Yeah.
And I think I've got a little bit of information up there, and I've studied a lot and researched a lot.
Just a wee bit.
So, and I'm going to do my best to each time we get together to present some of the current thinking in research. And we'll produce a fact sheet each week with some links for parents here to go and have a look at some of the research. Or if you don't believe what I'm saying, or you think I'm full of hot air or whatever about my opinions here, we'll provide some further reading that might spark a little bit more of an engagement in it, or just give fuel to your own interest as well.
So we call them personal research launch pads. So they can go off. Paula, I'm going to let you just go for it, and I'll pop back in if there are questions.
All right, no problem at all. It seems a bit facetious, isn't it? What is music? We all think we know what music is, and even though we may or may not listen to music, most of us have our preferences, and for most of us, it's a daily addition to the background of our life. Music is ever present, even if we're not actually aware of it at the time. Think about, what certain movies would sound like without the score that accompanies them, and I'll pretty much guess that most horror films are less scary without the score and the soundtrack that runs behind them. And, I think that can show us, even just at an initial stage, how music can interact with our emotional sense and create the anticipation, as well as, I'll talk about it a bit later, but the way music is structured actually has an effect on us because of the years and years that human beings have engaged with music. So if you've ever stopped to wonder what is actually happening when we listen to music, and even more, what happens when we engage with music through learning an instrument or learning how to actively listen to music? Music is a powerful force that's capable of changing the way your brain behaves and can enhance learning, emotional development, and cognitive function. Research data shows that children who engage with music learning from the early years develop strong skills in relation to numeracy and literacy. And I've certainly seen that played out in my own life with my own child, but with many other children that I have seen engage with music education from babies. Actively engaging, even with just the beat, is what actually allows children to develop spatial awareness. It gives them a stronger sense of their kinesthetic movement through, space and time. And also being able to feel a beat is what helps our children with their reading fluency, believe it or not. Just as something as simple as that, and often, even if you don't feel that you're able to sing to a baby, and I know a lot of people get quite, even with a baby, lack the confidence to do that. So what I was looking for, But even if all you ever do is tap on a baby's knee, even if there's no music present or if there is music present, that's laying the foundations of knowledge within a child's body and brain about rhythm and beat and movement and pacing and the way we speak, all of those things. And while that's hugely important, it's also, you can look at that and go, really? Because it's just a beat. But that is how powerful music is to us as human beings. You know, throughout life, the ability for us to be able to not just articulate our thoughts and feelings into words, but also to be able to deliver them is a really important life skill. You know, I have worked with a lot of people in business, and people underestimate how important their voice is to having a job, doing a job, fulfilling a career, etc. And it's not just the jobs that require us, you know, to be up in front of a judge or presenting at university, etc. Just about every job we do relies on us to be able to communicate well, to be heard, and to be able to articulate our thoughts in a cohesive way to influence other people or to lead people, etc. All of those things that our job roles can encompass. Learning music is a very powerful self-confidence tool for children, and depending on what they do and how, just being involved with a really strong music program can build those skills that allow them to go and compete for jobs, not just beyond any tertiary education, but even as teenagers when they want to get a job. I'll pretty much, you know, guarantee that the articulate teenager that walks in and can confidently, you know, ask for a job and provide the information and talk about things in an articulate way is probably going to get the job over somebody who shuffles their feet and won't communicate. Learning music can build those skills for our children. So we're going to look at a lot of those things throughout the year. And I'm just checking, I haven't missed anything off my preliminary notes, but I haven't. So we all know what music is, and music can be played, it can be sung, it can be every type of genre there is. It's on every television screen, radio, and handheld devices. It's with us all the time. And I think most of us in our quiet moments when we're pottering around, we, you know, can hum and whistle, and music comes to us through all engagements that we do. Music is an intelligence. You know, when we look at intelligence, you know, intelligence is defined as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. But more deeply, intelligence is also the ability to be able to solve problems or to fashion products that are valued in one or more cultural or community settings, whether that's through thought or through action. There are 8 established intelligences that were defined by Gardner, and some of you may be aware of what some of them are, or you maybe have not heard of them before. So there is spatial intelligence. So spatial intelligence usually applies, it's the ability of knowing where you are in space and being able to apply logic in terms of where things sit. So it's to be able to recognize an object when seen from different angles, to imagine movement and think about spatial relations in terms of body orientation, to be able to form a mental model of a spatial world and maneuver and operate using that mode. Also to create mental imagery, transform that imagery and recreate visual experiences, even in the absence of other physical stimuli that may be relevant, and to produce graphic likenesses of spatial information. So people who are generally considered to have a high spatial IQ include sailors and seamen, engineers, surgeons, sculptors, painters, architects, etc. That ability to be able to see something in your mind's eye and know how it's going to be perceived in the world and to be able to do it accurately. Then we have body kinesthetic intelligence. So that's expressed as, I guess we could say, the body as an art medium. So people who have strong bodily kinesthetic intelligence are the gifted sportsmen, the dancers that are able to translate thought into action through their bodies. So to be able to use your body in highly differentiated and skilled ways for expressive and goal-directed purposes. It's also the ability to work skillfully with an object, and where it involves fine motor movements, fingers and hands, and those that exploit gross motor movement of the body as well. So that again is, like we said, our sportsmen, our physical arts. Again, it will apply to designers, the ability to take that perhaps spatial understanding of something and transform it into something physical. It also applies to musicians when you think about the playing of an instrument. We have interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence, those key skills of being understand ourselves and other people and how we relate. Linguistic intelligence obviously is about language and the ability to communicate. Logical mathematical intelligence, that's our scientists, our mathematicians, engineers, etc., accountants, even people that can look at numbers and understand the patterns and what's happening. Naturalistic intelligence is the engagement with our natural world and showing a keen, not necessarily a gift, I don't like the word gifted, and we'll talk about that probably later, maybe not today, but in another session, but that connection with the world. And we have musical intelligence. And it's Gardner who defined the intelligence as actually, even though he defined the 8, he sort of put music at a higher level, because he said of all of the gifts with which individuals may be endowed, none emerges earlier than musical talent. I actually have a bit of an issue with the word talent, those that know me well. I think, as a part of how our Western culture has emerged, that pursuit in the arts tends to be seen as you need to be gifted or to have a talent in order to engage with music. And I guess there's a way of looking at intelligences in terms of, are these just innate or are these things that can be cultivated? And I think that it can be cultivated, because I will honestly say, I don't think I was a natural musician at all. When I compare my own musicality or musicianship to peers who never studied music, I had friends that could walk to a piano and just play everything that they heard. I've never really been able to do that, but I had a passion for music and developed an elite capacity through lots and lots of training. So how then do we measure what's an intrinsic intelligence or what is a learnt intelligence? And I do think that passion and desire can override a lack of inherent ability at times. And I think that's something to be borne in mind when our kids are involved with music. Very rarely are they going to get it perfect the first time or for a very long time. And we've got to, I think, cultivate our own patience and expectations around that. There were 2 other intelligence added. Emotional intelligence comes from Daniel Gorman, that wrote the book about EQ, emotional intelligence. And then spiritual intelligence was added by Raw. Now, when you consider most of the intelligences, they actually have a play within music itself, obviously music intelligence itself, but spatial intelligence and bodily kinesthetic intelligence are actually needed to be able to visualize how you're going to play an instrument, as well as to actually play it. Again, even in singing, spatial intelligence is important, because in singing we use a lot of imagery in how we place our sound out into the world. And then maths is a mathematical language of its own as well. Music is a part of every part of our expression as a human being, whether we see it or not, and that it has an ability to engage us in these other intelligences and potentially cultivate them. So, and I will reference singing predominantly, because that was my instrument of choice. But, as a singer, you can learn a linguistic intelligence in terms of how you sing in other languages through attuning your sound and engaging with multiple languages. I like to think that that creates a level of sensitivity and awareness around culture, language, and things being different. And I think the challenges for us in our modern world as parents is, and it's almost, I actually get a little bit concerned that the more advanced we become, it seems in a lot of respects we can be a lot less tolerant to difference, and that music can be one of those tools to teach our children to respect difference and celebrate difference as well. And again, emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence doesn't necessarily mean religiosity, but it does mean finding that something beyond us that creates meaning for us in this world. And music has the ability to engage us within the cultivation of all of our intelligences, and certainly for the benefit of our children. So there we go. So we talked about what that can give us, and we're going to explore more of that through the series in more detail. So tonight was the overview and a bit of a chunk down on how I'm looking at how music influences all those different aspects of our children's lives and education, and to increase how we see music within our lives, to potentially give something to our kids that they don't experience in other ways. Jackie, do you have any questions, or have there been any other questions?
Oh, look, I do. And I think that the first thing I sort of as an observation, from my days of teaching, which were, not quite back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but, not far off, was that there were people who were mathematically gifted, invariably were musically gifted, and at very high levels.
Yes.
So is there something more about that you mentioned it, but is there something more about that you could explain?
Yeah, we'll certainly cover it in, music as an education tool, but music is measured. We have beat, we have pace, we measure music over time. So measuring something over time is a mathematical concept. To be able to look at a score, if you're at the music reading stage, to be able to look at a score and see 4/4 and know immediately what that means. Children that engage with music and music reading early, when it comes to fractions, ratios, even indices and things within maths, they get it, because they've been used to looking at a bar and understanding how I'm going to break that bar up into 4. Oh no, it's in 8. How do I do that? So teaching the concept of fractions becomes super easy. There is something about how beat and rhythm and being able to measure inside your own body makes a difference when it comes to learning maths as well. I'm trying to remember what maths was like when I was at primary school and what I've seen with my son. But, there's a lot of concepts taught in maths that are kinesthetic. We get kids to use rods and blocks and things to create their concept of numeracy and building math skills. Again, engagement with music helps to solidify that for children. And yes, I think if I reflect, the maths whizzes at school always seem to be the music whizzes too. I actually remember having quite a crazy maths teacher at school, and he was a genius with music as well.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So it was just an observation. The other thing too that I've noticed in teaching is when I was not a music teacher, so I dealt in more abstract things, so social sciences and so on. But I did notice that the music students were better able to pick up patterns. So when we were doing, statistical or population studies and things like that, they were the first to come up with some of those intuitive, which you do have. You do have these intuitive senses about how to, when you start to see patterns emerging. But they were there a lot faster than other students.
Absolutely. Pattern in music is essential. All just the most basic song of 3 chords. There's a pattern and it repeats. And even before we get to complex things with, somebody like Wagner that deliberately put patterns into his music to illustrate a certain theme or a certain character or event. And so that when you hear that again in an opera, you would know what that meant. And the thing is, as human beings, we love patterns and we love being able to put the labels on things and understand things. And I think music very much sets up that pathway for that within education for children as well.
Now, do we have any questions from the floor? So we've got parents on here, teachers on here. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to pop into the Q&A or into the chat to me? Okay. How do we suggest better music to our teens? I know. So that's a bit of a loaded question, I have to say.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And I think
it's assuming presupposition that their music isn't okay, but
that's exactly right. And I think, you know, I'll talk about that in a bigger way in that good or bad music, because one of the things that I realized, especially when I went down an academic pursuit of music at university, you become vastly aware of how much music has ceased to exist that ever did before. You know, there are millions upon millions of songs and sounds and even formal compositions that have fallen to the dust of time with music. And you go, well, why is that? Because clearly at the time it was important. And music is only current while it has an audience, whoever that audience may be. And that's why I'll blame the boomers. I'm going to make an assumption that the majority of us engaged are probably sitting somewhere in the Gen X area. But, you know, you can see the whole nostalgia thing around music, and the bands that I thought they retired years ago and they come back to top up their super funds, right? And it's that nostalgic feeling for us all. The audience is still there and prepared to pay the tickets, right? That's probably a more facile way of looking at it. When we look at what our kids listen to, and I think it's really important to understand what our preconception is about what is good music is, right? Now, I had a really good friend, a singer colleague, who until she was 16 had never heard a pop song. I mean, not even Beatles or Simon and Garfunkel or something that can be considered pretty, you know, at an accessible level of appropriateness within the pop music world, because her mother didn't believe anything outside of classical music could be good, right? Now, at the same time, I can point out lots of people, and I probably spoke with one before with Wagner. There are a lot of them that had questionable personal lives, even before how their music has been used by other people. They're not this, because often when we look at pop music, it's not even just about the music, and can be about the personality that's performing it. And we can look at, you know, we don't like them. But I could draw you up a long list of very inappropriate classical composers and over history, and the very questionable things that they have done, that if we look through our modern lens of how we view personal behaviour, we wouldn't think they were so great anymore. And that's not to say there isn't great classical music out there. Clearly there is, and it can be very moving. It can be very important in terms of when it occurred historically and what it was telling the world about what was happening. I do tend to go in a big loop. I will come back to the point. But
that's okay.
I think when we criticize our children's musical choices, or we don't understand them, I think it's really important that we understand what our own preconceived ideas about music are. If it's just the noise of it that is unappealing to you, appreciate that a teenager's brain is going through very, very many changes. And while it might be annoying to us, it actually might be very soothing for them at that point in time. Emotionally, it may be helping them. But this is actually something I thought about recently, about the way our kids engage with music, because I guess as I was thinking about this, and our devices and headphones. And I would guess that these days, I mean, when I was a teenager, my father would walk through the lounge room and turn the stereo down when I had music on that he maybe wasn't that big a fan of. Our kids are listening to far more music now that we know what they're listening to, right? And I know my son's at that age where he's actually asked for a certain CD to be ordered. And I've actually gone, oh my God, that's right. He doesn't actually have a CD player to listen to music to. He's getting a stereo for his birthday, so I can hear what he's listening to, because that's going to clue me in as he matures about what's important to him, what's formulating his thoughts and ideas and whatever. If you don't like your kids' music, I'd say get informed about what it is. Who is the performer? What is it they're really saying? And I think the great ability we have now is that even though we may have these gut reactions to the sounds that we hear, our parents didn't have the ability to look up the information and potentially find that that person that's performing that music is actually, as in many cases, celebrated social rights activist that's got something to say, or they're a total low down, misogynistic, appalling human being. And maybe we don't want our kids listening to that. So I wouldn't ever criticize the music, because I think we know with our, and I'm no parenting expert, let me just say I am no parenting expert, but I think even reflecting on my own, the way I was parented, as soon as your parents said, I don't like that, turn that off, blah, 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 you turn it up louder, or you would go deeper into that genre than maybe you ever would left to your own devices. Right. So I would never criticize the music. I think I would look at what is it in the music you don't like, and and educate the alternative in your home to open up your child's own awareness about what it is they're listening to, and always teach them to make informed choices.
And that goes without saying for everything. That's not
absolutely. I was just going to say the same thing. It applies to everything. And then be clever in your questioning. Don't challenge them on something. Invite them into a conversation and say, can you tell me what do you love about this? What does this give you? And get some insight into it. And it may answer all your questions, and you're just going to have to put your prejudices around what you listen to aside, or it may help you to assist them to find a better choice if that choice hasn't been a good one in terms of ethics. And that's not in terms of how the music sounds, but to me, it's about what sits behind the music from the person who's performing it.
Good answer. Thank you. Now, we've got a question. It might be a little bit out of our wheelhouse, but I think it's definitely worth asking, and we can say, look, we can maybe come back to them if we need to.
Yep.
But can music help a 19-month-old to speak? And would phonic songs be helpful, or are they too young?
Okay. I think phonic songs belong somewhere else. But I do believe music can be a very powerful tool for a 19-month-old, not just to cultivate speech, but other things. So I think when I talk about music in the early years, singing to our kids is so important. Whether you think you can sing or you have a good singing voice or not, it's fundamental. If you've, and obviously I don't know the history background, so it's very general, and it's my perspective. I'd recommend being engaged with a speech therapist that gets it when it comes to young children. You really need to do your research to make sure of that. That singing to them is very important, because sometimes I know within some reading that I've done, any child that is potentially nonverbal because of a developmental presentation or reluctant to speak, and I think, we always need to be aware that there is a difference, that they may sing before they speak, because singing accesses a different part of the brain to speaking. And by utilizing that pathway, they may be able to start to communicate without actually articulating a spoken word as such. But I am an absolute advocate for early music education. Now, early music education is not learning an instrument. Predominantly, it's sitting in a circle with other children of a similar age and playing games while you sing. That's it. And the songs are simple, they're repetitive, because it's the repetition that builds down the layers of concepts of tone and pitch and beat and structure, which are the foundations for all learning, not just music learning. So if you aren't engaged with music education for preschool age children and babies. There are lots of very good practitioners out there and lots of very good programs that you can engage with. I'd really recommend that as well. I'm not an expert on phonics, and I know that phonics has been an in-out, popular, cast aside, back in popularity again, even within the educational framework of what's used in primary schools. So I won't talk to phonics as such, but I would always choose a more simpler approach rather than trying to force a cognitive learning process on a child. And I would go the route of music classes for young babies, and potentially a speech therapist that may have a little bit of skill in that area, or even music therapy as well as a conjunct to the speech therapy.
Lovely, thank you. And so just not a question, but a comment. Thank you, very interesting. I'm excited for future sessions. We'll shortly have to leave to go to choir rehearsal, believe it or not.
Yay!
So,
Music to my ears.
good on you.
I run choirs as well.
Good on you.
Thank you. That's really affirming for us. And women in my choir know, if you give me a topic, I can go. Right. So I'm always happy to share my opinion, but I really hope to be able to give lots of relevant information that stimulates, thought, and gives some tools that parents can use to help them in their parenting, just as much as we want to help our kids in raising them and educating them. Hopefully they'll leave home one day.
They do eventually. I can testify to that.
But yes, so as much as providing information, I want to stimulate some, questions and some thought that will take you a little bit further and may open up a little bit of magic that you can give to your kids and in your own.
So I think what Paul is saying is that we want our children to go to launch and be successfully adulting, which is
absolutely,
which is always the outcome of raising children to adults.
Exactly.
But Paula, can I just say thank you so much for this evening? It's been a very interesting and
thanks, Jackie.
Discussion of the questions. And folks, we value your feedback. So in the chat, I've put a survey link. It's really important that we do get your survey information back because it helps us helps inform future sessions that we might be running. And we're always keen to hear from you because you're our membership. So that's always good to hear back from you. And we do take all of that information on board. So I think join me in thanking Paula. So virtual claps. So thank you, Paula.
I'll take a bow. Take a bow.
And I think you'd all agree that this is going to be terrific information tonight, just to start with. But I think it bodes well for the rest of the series. So we're looking forward to that. So thanks, everybody. Thank you for sharing your Thursday night with us. And our future events are going to be up. Our dates will be up soon, and you'll be able to register for those and for future sessions with Paula and some of our other VPC live events. So
thanks, everybody. Good evening.
Bye.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you to our guest speaker. We hope you enjoyed today's topic. Do you want to know more about this video and other VPC live events? Please visit the Victorian Parents Council website, vicparentscouncil.vic.edu.au, and leave a review. We also welcome you to contact us if you would like to be our guest or if you have a topic around parenting and education. Thank you to Melbourne singer Emma Sidney for her permission to use her soundtrack, Cherish. Until next time, thank you for listening.